Hello, welcome to the digital experience retrospective on the last iteration. It's Thursday, December 16th of 2021. And I think we can hop right into it with things that went well. So Miguel, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to verbalize the fluid conversation that I had on my merge request. Uh, it was great to have lots of help, and everybody jumped on to do some recommendations and stuff. And I think it contributed a lot on the good result in that component. And yeah, thank you everybody that help me. And next is Jess.
Thanks. So I just started taking this design system / Figma class from a company called Memorizely. Started last week, and it's like a once a week for 5 weeks boot camp kind of. I already feel like I've learned a ton, and I like kind of knew things peripherally, but just like deep diving into things like one thing at a time each week, and it's been amazing. I had a chance to audit the slippers colors this week and just found some errors and some places where we could update to make them better, and doing type next week and all this stuff. And it's just been great. It's a great way to kind of audit our system while taking the class. So super stoked about it. Parker?
The buyer experience migration's been cooking, slinging pages left and right. Woo! It's really exciting. Great job.
Awesome. +1, and anyone else on things that went well? If not, we can move on to things to improve on. Miguel, you've got the first one as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, this iteration I had a bit of a underestimation of the work that I needed to do. So as a lesson learned, I will underpromise and over deliver. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I added a point there. I underestimate by 30 or 45% at least, because stuff always comes in. Under promise, over deliver.
Yeah. Lesson learned.
Right. I have the second point here. And after working with the product, it's really highlighted how much more work we have to do in documenting and evolving our engineering processes. And I actually want to share my screen and highlight something in particular. Let's do this. All right, here's our team. Dang, that's a huge engineering team. I mean, come on. And if you look over at the product, their engineering teams are like that big. So yeah, we got to really evolve our processes and like get in line. We need to start acting like an engineer. We are an engineer and we are acting like it, but like we need to like, I don't know, evolve. So some good documentation I found there that I think we should all read before the year's over about commit message guidelines, code review, testing, and coming back in the new year and starting to build that for our team. Like that's the product is probably like way overboard for us, but get some background information to start. That's all I got there.
Yeah, I think I have 2 suggestions, I guess. I know that for the documentation, we're going to build the storybook inside of the buyer experience repo. But in the meantime, maybe will be helpful to do some kind of documentation of the components and comment a bit how is it used and everything, because I guess that it will be very helpful to have those things when building the storybook components. And also I wanted to ask if it makes sense to define like a testing strategy with we have different goals than the product team, for example. So maybe we can combine some light testing and stuff that, for example, the visual regressions and maybe unit tests on some specific components. It will help a lot in the future, I think. Especially doing the migration stuff, because we are not in the final stage of our components and they will be evolving. So I don't know what you think about it.
We should do all of these things. It needs to be a priority, and it needs to be a priority at all levels. I don't know if it is. I don't know if it ever will be. We've talked about this a bunch in the past. And so like, I think that the thing to do is to like build a business case for this. We've like Michael brought this up at the beginning of the quarter, like being really like analytical about all of our decisions. And I think that before we like, all of these things are really aspirational, and then they get hard when things get hard. And the only way that people, like ourselves included, like every single person has to keep doing it all the time, and it needs to be rock solid. And the only reason that people do stuff is when it like solves problems for them and makes sense to you. So like, we need to like, I think before we set a testing strategy, before we set our processes, we should think about measuring what's wrong, and we should solve problems with it. So like, Barker, you brought up how big the team is. It's huge. So much complexity, so many things moving around. Stuff breaks all the time. Like, and like I've seen, like like looking at Slack, like how many 404s have we had because like something went wrong with migration? This is not like a comment on because like someone made a mistake. It is because the process didn't catch something happening. And so, but before we propose how do we fix this process, we should measure how bad is it really? Because if you have like 5 404s in 2 months and it takes a total of like 45 minutes to fix, do you really need a process to solve that? Right? Do we need to spend, and even like if we spend even an hour making a process to solve it, then we've wasted 15 minutes because we could have just kept fixing. I mean, like I would bet that process wins out in the long run, but we need to know it for sure, which means we need to know what the problems are. So like, I love testing and we should do it, but I don't think we should develop a strategy until we know what we're solving for. And we won't know what we're solving for until we can define it. So like, I think the first thing to do is like get better at understanding like the root cause of when things go wrong, and then like writing it down in the handbook and saying like, how many 404 incidents have we had? How many times have we knocked out the pipeline? How many times have we knocked out the website? How many hours did it take to resolve all of these things? Put it in one place, and then we can identify like what's actually costing the company money and like what's maybe just annoying to us, right? Because like, I don't love fixing a 404, but if it takes me 5 minutes to do, like, I can't justify spending time building a better process because like it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, sure. I also wanted to guide it also about the goals that the company has and we as a team have. So maybe the visual regressions are a good idea because something can go wrong. So we can still do it manually. And yeah, I agree completely.
You should record how much time it takes you to do the manual stuff, right? And then you can like report out and say like, I took 5 hours manually checking for visual regressions, right? And then after a couple of iterations, you'll be at 20 hours of that. And if we have 2 or 3 people with that, like all of a sudden we start to have a really compelling case for what if we spent like 5 hours automating it.
Okay, got it.
Great discussion there. Move on to the next one. All right. Let's define or start thinking about a process for asset management. Something that's really annoyed me since I've been here is like how large our image library is in www, which is why our pipeline takes so long. And we're starting with a nice clean slate over in the buyer experience repo. And should we just start dropping all our images in there? Maybe not. I don't know. John, I see you got a good point there.
Yes. So initially we have been taking the URLs from the Gitlab repo, but I don't know if that repo will be forever and those links will be active forever. So we started to take those images to the buyer's experience, but it's a good point that it will increase a lot and we will have like a big pipeline. So if it's possible to have a bucket or something to store these images, will be like a good thing for us for the future. Right now, it's not slow, but with all the images that are going in the future, I think it will be slow in the future. So right now, I think a bucket or something to store the images would be like a nice to have.
Miguel, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, basically that the bucket idea is a great idea, and linking back to the dot repo might not be a good idea because there are some images that need some adjustment. So yeah, I think the idea of the bucket is a great idea.
I want to make an action item here. I think we should someone, I don't know who, I guess I'll just do it. We use Google Cloud, so we won't it doesn't make sense to do S3, but we should get infrastructure to provision us like a bucket, but then we should probably just like slap it behind Fastly for a CDN on some of the stuff. So we'll need to, like, I think the real solution here is the digital asset management platform, but that's going to take like a year, if ever, to get. But we can do something a little simpler with like putting stuff into a bucket instead of into the Git repository. So I will take an action item to see if I can provision some infrastructure there. And then we're going to have a problem where, and it's fine, it's not a huge problem, but we'll, a pain point we'll run into is that the Google Cloud bucket will be like, will never be in sync with, well, or like there won't be a deterministic way to like sync up your changes with how the state of that changes, right? So like we'll just have to, we'll probably have to come up with a process to make sure that we don't like move images, rename them, etc., right? And like overwrite people's work because we can't manage it through like Git strategies there. So but I don't know what that problem is yet, so I'm not going to try too hard to solve it until we know that it's actually an issue. So I'm just going to add an action item for me to see if I can provision us a bucket.
All right. I think we're going to skip over the next item. We're going to hop. Yeah. No. Yeah. Okay. We're going to hop down to my item. Yeah. About things we could work on is reboarding to communication at Gitlab. They have a great handbook page, lots of awesome information on how to use our tools for communicating, like Gitlab, Slack, Google. Work happens in Gitlab, not Slack. We use our issues and our MRs for organizing work, because that is the inclusive way, so everyone can work asynchronously, and to avoid direct messages in Slack, and for transparency, to have our conversations in public channels. I love our water cooler channel, but if it's a conversation about work, it should go in the public channel. More of an FYI, unless anyone has anything else to add there. Not, we'll pass it over to Mateo.
Okay, so I felt this sprint we were flooding Lauren with all the review requests for the migration pages, and I know she has been pretty busy lately, so maybe we should split these review requests across the team. if anyone is available to take those.
Yeah, I think, and Barker, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like you and I operate in basically like a similar role, and we do the thing that like they have in the engineering handbook. I always forget the title for it, but like two people who can activate the same role so that there's a good amount of redundancy. So like if you're looking for, if you've got an MR that you're like, oh, I think like Barker would be the best person to review, like add me to that list too, sort of like interchangeably, so that we can like at the very least like split that load in half. And I'm sure like Nate also can like take on a bunch of that too, so maybe in thirds, and you know, kind of like down the ladder of seniority there, right? So like I say just do it. Like here's the other thing too, like ask for a review, and like reviewers should like feel free to like say no and be like, I can't get to this, find someone else, right? Like that, I think that's an appropriate, it's in the handbook, like that's an appropriate response to say like, I basically like if you can do a review within 2 days, you should do it. If you can't do it within 2 days, you should let people know immediately and acknowledge it. They can find someone else. So one, just like, yeah, spread it out and toss it around to other folks, especially people who've been here longer and are just like, you know, probably going to be a little faster to review stuff anyways. And then two, for people who get tagged for reviews, just like, if you can't do it, like let the person requesting know, and then just be like, go find someone else, and then go do it.
Cool. No, got it.
Yes, maybe we can do some like a strategy next sprint, like tagging two reviewers, and one of those can say yes and the other no, and we remove the one of those two reviewers from the MRs, because this spring we send a lot of MRs to Lauren, so she's flooded with MRs.
I like looking at them. They've all been great.
I think there's also like domain specific expertise that people have. So it's like certain people just like, know about certain things more. So it's like, you can also think about it that way. It's like, oh, like who has specific expertise?
I think our team will get better and stronger if you do the opposite of that. And if you send it to someone who's not a domain expert, like if you need a domain expert because something is like really challenging and you're like, I'm stuck, then of course go to the domain expert for help. But if like someone's a domain expert on it, I think we should find someone else so that they can begin to build up the muscles to be, so that we're not, what we don't want to do is be in a position where like only one person knows everything about like this one aspect of things. And then if they're out, we like lose a ton of cadence on that. So like I totally hear you on, like it makes sense, especially for the tricky stuff. But like even with the tricky stuff though, I think like spreading out the opportunity for other people to become domain experts, because like you mentioned somewhere in a thing that like you've suddenly become domain expert on docs, and like just because like when I like, and because I think I'm like, oh, Javi's working on docs, like I'll go to him on this, but like only because you keep on getting asked for it. So like the first couple times you get asked on it, you might not feel like an expert, but by like the fifth time you will. So like just start asking other people. Cool. Anything else? I've got an action item. I will do this sometime shortly. I have no idea what that process looks like. And so like, I think for now, like, I don't think it's too risky to keep putting stuff in the repository because it's still early yet. And when we do get the bucket, it will be like, the reason to like fix our images in like one place is like, we will keep on outgrowing it. Like right now we're about to outgrow managing it in Git, but at least if we get it all in Git, migrating from Git to a bucket will make sense. Eventually we will probably outgrow using the bucket, but if everything's in the same place, then migrating to the next solution will be much easier rather than like spreading it out. So like keep doing what you're doing, put stuff in the buyer experience repository, because like I'll probably just literally copy static into whatever we end up with. And I don't know what the timeline on that is, but like stay the course and then we'll fix it and we'll like broadcast that when it's fixed.
Maybe a good practice we can do in the meantime is to compress the images and also make them shorter.
Sweet. Nothing else. Good talk. I'll post these. I gotta run for a little bit, but I'll post these meetings up later this afternoon. See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.